In the history of warfare, numbers usually tell the story. The larger army wins, the smaller army dies. But in the summer of 1457, on a dusty plain in what is now Albania, mathematics failed. 40,000 Ottoman soldiers, the most feared war machine of the 15th century, marched into the valley of Albulena. They brought with them heavy cavalry, janissaries, and the absolute certainty of victory. Facing them, a ragged, exhausted force of less than 8,000 men. By all logic, this shouldn't have been a battle. It should have been a massacre. And the Ottomans had a secret weapon that made their victory seem inevitable. They weren't just led by their own generals. They were led by a traitor, Hamza Kastrioti. He was not just any defector. He was the nephew of the Albanian leader George Kastriot, the man the world knew as Skanderbeg. Hamza had eaten at Skanderbeg's table. He had fought by his side. He knew every tactic, every trick, and every weakness of his uncle. Imagine the psychological horror. Skanderbeg wasn't just fighting an empire, he was fighting his own blood. He was fighting a mirror image of himself who knew exactly how he thought. The Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, was done playing games. He sent Hamza and his best general, Isaac Bey, with one clear order: bring me Skanderbeg's head and burn Albania to the ground. But on that scorching September day, Hamza Kastrioti would learn a brutal lesson. He knew Skanderbeg's tactics, but he didn't know Skanderbeg's patience. This is the story of the Battle of Albulena, the moment 8,000 ghosts destroyed a superpower. To understand the miracle of Albulena, we have to understand the desperation that preceded it. By 1457, Skanderbeg had been fighting the Ottoman Empire for over a decade. He was the shield of Europe, a nuisance that Sultan Mehmed I could no longer tolerate. The Sultan had just conquered Constantinople 4 years prior. He was the most powerful man on earth, and yet this small strip of land in the Balkans refused to kneel. Mehmed didn't just send an army, he sent an extermination force. Depending on the historical source, the numbers range from 40,000 to as high as 80,000 men. But even the most conservative estimates put the Ottomans at a 5-to-1 advantage against Skanderbeg. But the real danger wasn't the number of swords, it was the intelligence. Hamza Kastrioti, Skanderbeg's nephew, had defected because he felt overlooked. He was ambitious, arrogant, and bitter. When he rode into Albania alongside Isaac Bey, he brought the Ottomans the one thing they lacked: the blueprint to Skanderbeg's mind. Hamza told the Ottoman commanders, "Do not chase him into the mountains. That is where he wants you. Do not engage in skirmishes. He will bleed you dry. Force him into a pitched battle, and we will crush him with sheer weight." It was sound advice. It was lethal advice. As the massive Ottoman host moved into the Mot River Valley, spreading out like a slow-moving plague, Skanderbeg realized immediately that he could not fight this enemy the traditional way. If he stood his ground, he would be encircled.
If he attacked head-on, his men would be ground to dust. So, Skanderbeg did something that terrified his own lieutenants. He didn't fight. He ran. This wasn't a tactical retreat. To the untrained eye, it looked like a total collapse. Skanderbeg ordered his forces to scatter, not just to move back, but to disintegrate. He broke his army into small groups of 5, 10, or 20 men. He ordered them to vanish into the forests, the caves, and the high peaks of Mount Tumanishta. And then, silence. Weeks passed. August turned to September. The Ottoman army camped in the broad fields of Albulena, south of the city of Leja. They waited for Skanderbeg to strike. They kept their armor on. They set double watches. They expected the famous Albanian ambush. But nothing came. This is where Skanderbeg's genius truly shined. He understood that the most dangerous weapon in war is not the sword, but the narrative. He began to feed false intelligence to the enemy. Spies and local villagers, loyal to Skanderbeg but acting as terrified peasants, were sent to the Ottoman camp. They told Isak Bey and Hamza exactly what they wanted to hear.
Skanderbeg has fled, they said. His army has mutinied. He is running toward the coast to catch a ship to Italy. He has abandoned us. To Isak Bey, this made perfect sense. Who would stay and fight 40,000 men with a broken army? Even Hamza, who knew his uncle best, began to believe it. His ego wanted to believe it. He wanted to believe that his defection had been the final straw that broke the old lion's spirit. The Ottomans relaxed. Imagine the scene in the Ottoman camp. Tens of thousands of soldiers who had been sleeping in their armor for months finally took it off. They began to forage. They celebrated. They believed the war was over without a single major battle being fought. Isak Bey and Hamza Kastrioti began planning the administrative takeover of the country. They dropped their guard. But they were wrong about one thing. Skanderbeg hadn't run to Italy. He was less than a few miles away, watching them from the tree line.
We often talk of the bravery of charging into battle, but we rarely talk about the bravery of sitting still. For weeks, Skanderbeg's 8,000 men had been hiding in the dense vegetation of the mountains overlooking Albulena. They were forbidden to light fires. They were forbidden to speak loudly. They lived off dry rations. Think about the discipline required here. 8,000 men, hungry and cramped, watching their enemies feast and celebrate in the valley below. The urge to attack or to flee must have been overwhelming, but Skanderbeg held them back. He was waiting for a specific moment. He needed the Ottomans to be not just relaxed, but incapacitated. He waited for the heat. September 2nd, 1457. It was a sweltering day. The midday sun beat down on the valley floor. In the Ottoman camp, lethargy had set in. The sentries were drowsy. Officers were resting in their tents to escape the heat. The horses were unsaddled and grazing. Hamza Kastrioti and Isak Bey were likely discussing their victory, completely unaware that the jaws of a trap were about to snap shut. Before we witness Skanderbeg's masterstroke, if you enjoy discovering the brilliant tactics of history's greatest underdogs, consider subscribing and liking this video. It helps our channel survive against the algorithm, just as Skanderbeg survived against the Empire. Now, back to the mountains. The silence of the mountains was absolute, until, suddenly, it wasn't.
It started with a sound that would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. Thousands of war horns, trumpets, and drums erupted simultaneously from the tree line. It wasn't just a signal to attack, it was a sonic weapon designed to induce sheer panic. Before the Ottoman soldiers could even understand what was happening, the Albanians were upon them. Skanderbeg led the charge himself. 8,000 men poured down the slopes like an avalanche. They didn't just attack, they crashed into the Ottoman camp with the force of a natural disaster. The surprise was absolute. Ottoman soldiers were cut down before they could reach their weapons. Horses ran wild, trampling their own masters. There was no battle line, there was no formation, there was only chaos. Isaac Bey tried to rally his troops, but it was impossible. The dead army had come back to life. And in the center of the storm, Skanderbeg sought out his target. The Ottoman numbers, 40,000 strong, became a disadvantage. Packed tightly in the camp, unorganized and panicked, they couldn't maneuver. They tripped over each other. The superior Ottoman cavalry, the pride of the Sultan, was useless because they couldn't mount their horses in time. It was a slaughter. The Albanians fought with a ferocity that terrified the invaders. They weren't fighting for land, they were fighting for survival. Hamza Kastrioti, the traitor, found himself in the middle of the nightmare he had tried to orchestrate. He saw his uncle's banner cutting through the smoke, getting closer and closer. The man who claimed to know Skanderbeg's mind had failed to predict his heart. The battle was over almost as soon as it began. The Ottoman army, the superpower of the age, collapsed completely. Those who weren't killed fled into the river or the forests where they were hunted down by the locals. Estimates vary, but it is believed that up to 30,000 Ottoman soldiers were killed or captured that day. Isaac Bey managed to escape with a handful of men, humiliated. But Hamza Kastrioti was not so lucky. He was captured alive. Imagine the moment. The nephew kneeling before the uncle he had betrayed. The silence on the battlefield as the dust settled. Hamza expected death. In almost any other culture or any other time, a traitor of his magnitude would be executed immediately, probably tortured publicly. But Skanderbeg's response was more complex. He spared Hamza's life. Why? Some say it was family loyalty. Others say it was a crueler punishment. Death is a release. But Hamza was thrown into a dungeon in Naples, Italy, to rot in darkness, living every day with the knowledge of his catastrophic failure.
The victory at Albulena echoed across Europe. When the news reached Rome, Pope Calixtus III was stunned. He named Skanderbeg Athleta Christi, the champion of Christ. But the true legacy of Albulena isn't about titles or religion. It is a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. Skanderbeg proved that numbers are irrelevant if you control the psychology of the battlefield. He turned the Ottomans' greatest strength, their size and their intelligence network, against them. He used Hamza's knowledge to feed him the lies he wanted to believe. 8,000 men defeated 40,000, not because they were stronger, but because they were patient. Skanderbeg would fight for another 10 years, keeping the Ottoman Empire at bay until his death. but never again would a traitor underestimate him so badly. At Albulena, the lesson was written in blood. You can betray your family, you can betray your country, but you cannot cheat destiny when destiny is holding a sword. Skanderbeg chose mercy for his traitorous nephew, a decision that historians still debate today. What would you have done in his place? Execute the traitor or let him rot in prison? Let us know your verdict in the comments below. For more stories of impossible victories and military genius, be sure to subscribe. We'll see you on the next battlefield.